The United States military has disabled the Botswana-flagged tanker MT Lexi after it repeatedly ignored warnings and continued to sail towards Iran's Kharg Island. This, of course, has put the world on edge once again. More in this report.
A single missile, one flash across the sky, one direct hit. And suddenly, the fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran looked more fragile than ever. On June 2nd, the U.S. military did something extraordinary. According to U.S. Central Command, an American aircraft fired an AGM-114 Hellfire missile into the engine room of a Botswana-flagged oil tanker called the MT Lexi. The vessel was sailing toward Iran's Kharg Island, one of Tehran's most important oil export hubs. Washington says the ship repeatedly ignored warnings and refused to comply with orders from U.S. forces for nearly 24 hours. The result? A precision strike, not against a warship, not against a military base, but against a commercial tanker. The missile crippled the vessel and prevented it from reaching Iranian waters. CENTCOM says the operation was part of a wider U.S. maritime blockade imposed on Iranian ports in April. According to the U.S. military, 6 commercial vessels have now been disabled and more than 120 redirected under the blockade. But this story isn't just about the ship. It's also about the weapon that stopped it. But what exactly is a Hellfire missile? Originally designed as a precision battlefield weapon, the AGM-114 Hellfire is one of America's most accurate air-to-surface missiles. Traveling at speeds above Mach 1 and capable of striking targets more than 10 kilometers away, the missile is designed to hit with surgical precision. Launched from drones, helicopters, and aircraft, the Hellfire can destroy vehicles, bunkers, and small vessels while minimizing collateral damage. That's precisely why it was reportedly used in this operation. Powerful enough to disable a ship's engine room, but precise enough to avoid sinking the vessel outright. Originally developed during the Cold War as an anti-tank weapon, the Hellfire has evolved into a multi-role missile used across battlefields around the world. It is relatively compact, roughly 1.6 meters long, weighing around 45 to 50 kilograms depending on the variant. But don't let its size fool you. The Hellfire packs a devastating punch. Many variants use laser guidance, allowing operators to hit targets with remarkable accuracy. Others use radar guidance, enabling so-called fire-and-forget capability. The missile can be launched from helicopters, drones, aircraft, vehicles, and naval platforms. Its greatest strength? Precision. Military planners often choose the Hellfire when they want to disable a specific target while limiting damage to surrounding areas. That precision is exactly why it has become one of the most widely used tactical missiles in the U.S. arsenal. And in this case, according to CENTCOM, the target wasn't the entire tanker. It was the engine room, enough to stop the ship without sinking it. But the story didn't end there. Hours after the tanker strike, CENTCOM says Iran responded. American forces reported intercepting multiple Iranian drones and ballistic missiles launched toward regional targets. The U.S. says missiles fired toward Kuwait fell short or broke apart. Others aimed at Bahrain were intercepted by American and Bahraini air defense systems. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, meanwhile, described its actions as retaliation for what it called American aggression. And Washington answered once again, this time targeting what CENTCOM described as an Iranian military ground control station on Keshem Island near the Strait of Hormuz. The result is a dangerous cycle: strike, retaliation, counterstrike, and escalation. Because the Strait of Hormuz isn't just another waterway. Roughly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil trade passes through this narrow corridor. Any confrontation here can ripple through energy markets, shipping lanes, and global diplomacy. And that's what makes the MT Lexi strike so significant. It wasn't merely about one ship or one missile. It was a demonstration of how quickly a single precision strike can send shockwaves across one of the world's most volatile regions. And as Washington and Tehran continue their dangerous game of pressure and counter-pressure, the missile may have hit its target. But the wider crisis is still very much in motion.
Ahead of the NATO summit in Turkey, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has urged EU countries to defend their own territories by themselves. At a time when US is juggling multiple developments across the world, is this once again a sign of the US and EU going apart? Take a look at this report.
A sharp warning from Washington is fueling a new debate inside NATO ahead of a critical summit in Turkey. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says NATO countries must step up and be able to conventionally defend their own sovereign national territory, signaling growing US pressure on European allies to take greater responsibility for their own security. Rubio also challenged how some members calculate defense spending, warning that military commitments must be backed by real capabilities, not accounting tricks.
You can't say that pensions for former soldiers and sailors is part of your 5% or your 3.5. I mean, that can't happen. But the bigger challenge that much of Europe faces, many countries in NATO faces, their economies are not growing, and in order to spend more money on defense, they're going to either have to raise taxes or cut social programs.
Rubio's remarks land at a sensitive moment for the alliance. NATO members are preparing to discuss higher spending targets and the future distribution of defense responsibilities. At the center of the debate is a simple question: who should bear the cost of Europe's security?
And part of the reality of NATO, whether we like to hear it or not, is that many of the countries in Europe were able to build these very robust social safety nets because they didn't have to spend it on defense, because NATO and the United States were providing it for it. So they're going to have to deal with that reality. The second point is, and this is not an anti-NATO statement, but it is the reality. The United States has global obligations.
The Secretary's comments also reflect a broader shift in American strategic thinking. As Washington balances challenges across multiple regions, officials are increasingly urging European allies to take greater responsibility for their own defense and military readiness.
We have growing mill-to-mill cooperation in our own Western Hemisphere, especially taking on these transnational terrorist organizations and the like. So we don't have like unlimited military resources, even though we have a very large budget. They're not unlimited. And so we have to be able to allocate our resources and our personnel in ways that make sense, and it has to come at the expense of something. And so I think that's the reality that we have shared with our NATO partners from the very beginning of this administration, and have been consulting every step along the way. But these countries will have to step up. They, at a minimum, have to be able to conventionally defend their own sovereign national territory for the most part.
The message is likely to resonate across European capitals, already grappling with sluggish economic growth, budget pressures, and rising security concerns. Any push for significantly higher military spending could trigger difficult political debates over national priorities. With NATO leaders set to meet in Turkey, Rubio's remarks have added fresh urgency to a long-running burden-sharing dispute. What began as a debate over defense spending targets is increasingly becoming a broader discussion about Europe's military self-reliance and the future role of the United States within the alliance.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the Briefing Room from Bengaluru. Join us tomorrow night for another edition.